In the sterile glass and steel heart of the Vance Industries Tower, Serafina Vance lived a life of calculated precision. Her world was one of quarterly reports, stock valuations, and the silent, isolating hum of power. Miles away, in a small apartment that smelled of oil and warm laundry, Caleb Hayes lived a life of quiet devotion. His world was one of grease-stained hands, bedtime stories for his 7-year-old daughter, Maya, and the steady, rhythmic work of keeping a city's forgotten machines running. He was a janitor, a ghost in the corporate machine, his brilliance hidden beneath a humble blue uniform. The two lived in separate universes, destined never to collide, until the night of the annual Vance Industries Gala, a glittering affair designed to showcase Serafina's latest triumph. The Ether Network, a revolutionary holographic communication system. The centerpiece, a massive projector, was meant to dazzle. Instead, it sputtered. The shimmering image of a connected globe dissolved into a chaotic storm of static and corrupted data. A wave of murmurs swept through the opulent ballroom. Serafina's face, a mask of cold fury, scanned the room. Her engineers huddled, useless. Her gaze then fell upon Caleb, quietly mopping a spill near the edge of the display. His battered metal toolbox sat beside him. On its lid, faded and peeling, was an old Vance Industries logo. The sight ignited her frustration into a focused, cruel point. She strode towards him, the clack of her heels silencing the room. "You," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You're part of the company. Why's my company's logo on your toolbox?" Caleb looked up, his expression calm. "It was a gift, ma'am, from a long time ago." "A loyal employee," Serafina sneered, gesturing to the malfunctioning monolith. "Then prove it. Fix my billion-dollar machine." A gasp went through the crowd. It was a public humiliation, a cruel joke, but Caleb simply nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. "All right." He said it not with defiance, but with the quiet weariness of a man who just wanted to finish his shift. The crowd held its breath, expecting a farce. They had no idea they were about to witness a master at work. Caleb knelt and unlatched his old toolbox. It didn't contain the sophisticated diagnostic tablets of Serafina's engineers. Instead, it held rows of simple, perfectly maintained instruments. He ignored the panicked schematics on the engineers' screens and simply placed a hand on the projector's casing, closing his eyes. He was listening, feeling the subtle, incorrect vibrations of a system in distress. The quiet confidence in his posture began to shift the room's atmosphere from mockery to curiosity. He pulled out a small, custom-milled tuning fork and tapped it gently against a specific panel. He listened to the resonance, then opened a small, unmarked service port the other engineers had overlooked. A tiny green light blinked within. He didn't connect a laptop. Instead, he pulled out a compact driver and began to work on the physical hardware, his movements economical and precise. A few minutes passed in complete silence. Then, he plugged a simple fiber optic jumper cable from one port to another, bypassing a fried regulator. With a final, decisive click, he closed the panel. The chaotic static on the holographic display vanished. In its place, the globe reappeared, but it was different now. It was sharper, brighter, the data streams flowing with an impossible fluidity. It wasn't just fixed, it was optimized. Before anyone could react, Caleb pointed to a corner of the now perfect display. "There," he said, his voice steady. The malfunction wasn't a failure, it was sabotage. There's a recursive loop in the primary rendering kernel. It's designed to look like an overload, but it's malicious. You need to check your internal network security. The room erupted in stunned whispers. Serafina Vance stared, her arrogance shattered and replaced by sheer, unadulterated astonishment. The janitor hadn't just fixed her machine. He had diagnosed a corporate conspiracy in under 10 minutes. The next morning, Serafina sat in her office, the city sprawling beneath her. The name on the file her head of security had placed on her desk was Caleb Hayes. The details inside were impossible. He wasn't a janitor, he was a ghost. Former lead systems architect for the legendary Ares 5 Deep Space project. A certified prodigy with patents in quantum computing and neural network design. He had vanished from the industry 5 years ago after a catastrophic failure on a satellite launch. A failure, the file noted with emphasis, that was later attributed to a subcontractor's faulty materials, long after Caleb had already resigned, taking the professional fall to shield his junior team from the corporate fallout. He had sacrificed a legendary career out of integrity. The woman who valued victory above all else could not comprehend a man who valued his people more than his own name. She found his address, a modest walk-up in a neighborhood her limousine had never before entered. She needed to understand. She needed to recruit him. She found him not in a workshop, but on the floor of his small, sunlit living room, patiently helping his daughter, Maya, build a tower of colorful blocks. The scene was so filled with simple, unassuming warmth that it felt alien to Serafina. She knocked, and when Caleb opened the door, his calm expression was unreadable. He wasn't surprised to see her. He simply invited her in. She began her pitch immediately, a torrent of numbers, opportunities, and offers of a senior executive position. She spoke of power, of resources, of reclaiming his rightful place. Caleb listened politely, but his attention was on Maya, who had stopped building her tower and was now watching the powerful woman with wide, curious eyes. Serafina's words, so effective in a boardroom, felt hollow and loud in this quiet space. The corporate speech faltered on Serafina's lips as Maya approached, holding up a crayon drawing. It depicted a large, intricate robot standing alone in a field of gray, its gears and wires meticulously rendered. "This is Gigabot," the little girl announced with solemn importance. "He's the smartest robot in the whole world. He can build anything." Serafina offered a tight, professional smile. "That's a wonderful drawing." "He's sad, though," Maya continued, her brow furrowed with a child's pure empathy. "He's all alone. He needs a friend to help him shine." The simple words struck Serafina with the force of a physical blow. In the lonely, powerful robot, she saw a perfect reflection of herself, brilliant, isolated, and sad. Her carefully constructed composure cracked. For the first time, she saw Caleb not as a strategic asset to be acquired, but as a man who understood something she had long forgotten. "I need your help, Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice softer, stripped of its usual authority. "The sabotage, it's a threat to my entire company." Before Caleb could answer, a name flashed on Serafina's phone: Marcus Thorne, a board member, her ex-fiancé. The man she had broken up with weeks ago after discovering his ruthless ambition was a corrosive poison. "Serafina, darling," his voice oozed through the speaker. "I heard about the little glitch at the gala. A terrible shame. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. We need to discuss if your leadership is stable enough to weather this." The threat was clear. The timing was too perfect. A cold realization washed over her. The sabotage wasn't just a random attack. It was personal. It was Marcus. She looked at Caleb, a new desperation in her eyes. This was no longer just business. It was a fight for survival, and the humble janitor in front of her was the only person who could help her win it. "He's trying to force a vote of no confidence," Serafina explained, pacing the small living room. "Marcus wants the company. He always has. This glitch is his pretext." Caleb absorbed the information, his gaze steady. He was no longer just a janitor. The focused, analytical mind of the engineer was taking over. "The code was sophisticated," Caleb said, thinking aloud. "It was masked to look like a hardware failure, and it had a digital backdoor. He didn't just want the system to fail. He wanted a way back in to do more damage later." He walked over to a small desk, cluttered with spare parts and a well-used soldering iron. "To trace it, we need access to the system's root logs, not the surface-level reports your IT team sees, but the deep kernel logs from the last 72 hours. Serafina nodded, pulling out her secure tablet. "I can get us in. My credentials have the highest level of clearance." She tapped rapidly on the screen, her brow furrowed in concentration as she navigated layers of corporate security. After a moment, a red banner flashed across the display. "Access denied." "What? That's impossible," she stammered. "My access has been revoked." Marcus. He must have anticipated this. He had used his board-level authority to lock her out of her own system, isolating her completely. It was a brilliant, vicious move. A wave of despair washed over Serafina. She was trapped. "He's cut me off," she said, her voice thin. "There's no way to get the proof." Caleb looked from the tablet to the window, his gaze distant. He wasn't looking at the screen, he was visualizing the building, its infrastructure, its hidden pathways. He locked the front door, Caleb said softly. But every system has a back door. He's thinking about software, he's forgotten about the hardware. Caleb's plan was audacious. The ether projector draws a tremendous amount of power, he began, sketching on a notepad he pulled from his toolbox. Any significant software anomaly, like the malicious code he used, would create a unique power consumption signature, a tiny, measurable fluctuation. It's a digital fingerprint. Serafina followed his logic, her mind racing. But those logs are purged every hour. The server logs are, Caleb corrected. But the uninterruptible power supply system, the building's emergency battery backup, logs every microvolt. It has to, for diagnostic purposes. It's a closed system, not connected to the main network. No one ever thinks to check it, and its memory banks are shielded. Marcus wouldn't have thought to wipe it. Hope, fierce and sharp, cut through Serafina's anxiety. That night, they returned to the silent, cavernous Vance Industries tower. Serafina's keycard, though blocked from the network, still opened the physical doors. Caleb led them not to the gleaming server rooms, but down to the sub-basement, a concrete labyrinth of pipes and conduits. He found the central power distribution unit, a wall of humming metal cabinets. Using a set of specialized keys from his own ring, he opened a maintenance panel marked with hazard symbols. Inside was a diagnostic port, ancient by tech standards. Caleb connected a ruggedized, older model laptop. Lines of raw data scrolled across the screen. There, he murmured, pointing to a specific timestamp that corresponded with the Gala malfunction. A power draw anomaly. It's irregular. It's not a hardware spike. He typed a series of commands, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He was isolating the specific electrical signature and cross-referencing it with the code fragments he remembered from the projector. The code's signature matches a known exploit, he said, his voice grim. One developed by a rival corporation, Omnicorp. Marcus must be working with them. He's not just trying to take over, he's selling the company out from the inside. The full scope of the treachery was now laid bare. It was corporate espionage on a massive scale, and Marcus was at its center. This data proves a connection to Omnicorp's exploit, Serafina said, staring at the screen. But it doesn't directly name Marcus. His lawyers will call it circumstantial. We need something that ties his hand to the weapon. Caleb leaned back, thinking. The code had to be uploaded to the projector's internal drive. That would have happened locally. He wouldn't risk doing it over the network where it could be traced. He did it from inside the building. He began to map out the logic. To upload the code, he would need direct physical access, but the projector was kept in a secure lab until the gala. Access to that lab is logged biometrically. Serafina's eyes lit up. The access logs! We can check them! They made their way to the security nexus, a room filled with monitors. Serafina used her authority to override the local system, pulling up the logs for the R&D lab. They scrolled through weeks of data. Engineers, technicians, herself, all expected entries. But there, 3 days before the gala, at 2:17 a.m., was an entry that made her blood run cold. Marcus Thorne. He was in the lab, she whispered. This proves he had the opportunity. It's still not enough, Caleb countered, his mind already 3 steps ahead. He'll claim he was there for a routine inspection. We need to prove not just that he was there, but what he did there. He paused, his gaze fixed on a schematic of the projector on one of the monitors. The upload port he would have used, it's a high-speed data transfer port. To prevent data corruption, it has a micro camera that records a thermal image of the connecting device's pins. It's a quality control measure, a fail-safe. Serafina's breath hitched. Can we access those images? They're stored on an isolated chip inside the projector itself, Caleb replied. They're designed to be overwritten after 100 hours. We have to get back to the ballroom and pull the chip before it's too late. Their plan was set. They would retrieve the chip, link the thermal image of Marcus's device to the access logs, and present the undeniable proof at the emergency board meeting the next day. The emergency board meeting was a study in corporate warfare. The long, polished table reflected the grim faces of the company's most powerful figures. Marcus Thorne stood at the head, a portrait of feigned concern. He delivered a flowery speech about stability and the need for a steady hand at the tiller during this crisis he himself had engineered. He was moments away from calling the vote of no confidence. "Your concern is touching, Marcus," Serafina said, striding into the room. Her voice was calm, but it carried an edge of cold steel that made everyone sit up straighter. "But your assessment is based on incomplete data." She presented the server logs from the power grid, showing the Omnicorp exploit. Marcus scoffed. "Circumstantial. This proves nothing beyond a sophisticated external attack, which only reinforces my point about a lapse in leadership." "You're right," Serafina agreed, nodding slowly. "It's not enough. But what about your late-night visit to the R&D lab 3 days ago?" She displayed the biometric access log on the main screen. A murmur went through the board members. Marcus's composure didn't slip. "I am a board member. I was conducting an oversight inspection. It is my duty." "Was it also your duty to interface directly with the Ether prototype?" Serafina countered. At that moment, the doors opened again. Caleb Hayes walked in, dressed not in a janitor's uniform, but in a simple dark suit that couldn't hide the quiet authority he carried. He held a small, static-proof bag. "The projector's diagnostic port records a thermal image of every device it connects to," Caleb announced, his voice filling the silent room. He projected the image onto the screen. It was a unique heat signature from a custom-built data drive. This image was captured at 2:19 a.m., 2 minutes after Mr. Thorne entered the lab. Marcus paled but sneered. "A picture of a thumb drive. How is that proof?" "Because your thumb drive is unique," Caleb said. He held up a second image, a public photo of Marcus at a tech conference last year. He zoomed in on Marcus's keychain. Hanging from it was the same custom drive, a gift from a tech blogger, its distinctive shape unmistakable. "But the final proof," Caleb said, his voice dropping slightly, "is in the encryption. The malicious code was locked with a very specific key. And when we analyzed the thermal residue on the projector's port," he displayed a final string of code on the screen. "We found the ghost of that key, a key which, according to public patent filings, belongs exclusively to one Marcus Thorne. Checkmate." The silence in the room was absolute. Marcus Thorne, exposed and defeated, simply slumped into his chair. His corporate coup was over. In the aftermath, the story of the janitor who saved Vance Industries became a quiet legend within the company walls. Marcus Thorne was unceremoniously ousted, his shares bought back, and his connections to Omnicorp handed over to federal investigators. The victory was total. Caleb Hayes was no longer a ghost. He was the hero of the hour. Serafina called him to her office, the same one where she had first read his impossible file. The view of the city seemed less like a kingdom to be ruled and more like a community to be protected. "The board is prepared to offer you the position of Chief Technology Officer," she said, her voice filled with genuine respect. "Name your salary, name your terms. It's yours." Caleb looked out the window, then back at her. He smiled faintly. "I appreciate that, Ms. Vance, more than you know. But that's not my world anymore." Serafina's face fell. "I see. No, you don't," he said gently. "I'm not leaving. But I don't want to run a department of thousands. I want to build something new." He slid a single piece of paper across her desk. It was proposal, not for a massive R&D division, but for a small, elite team, the Integrity Division. Their sole mandate would be to act as an internal quality control and ethical oversight group, stress testing every product not for marketability, but for reliability and safety. Their job was to find the flaws before they became disasters. "I don't want to build things that are just profitable," Caleb said. "I want to build things that are worthy of people's trust. That's the job I want." Serafina read the proposal, a slow, genuine smile spreading across her face. It was brilliant. It was exactly what the company needed. It was exactly what she needed. "I accept, Mr. Hayes." "Caleb," he corrected her softly. A few months later, the autumn sun cast a golden glow over a city park. The air was crisp, filled with the laughter of children. Maya shrieked with delight as a kite, a complex, beautiful thing of Caleb's own design, danced and soared in the wind. Caleb stood beside her, his hand on the string, guiding its flight. Serafina stood next to him, no longer in a severe power suit, but in jeans and a soft sweater. She watched Maya, her expression one of unguarded happiness. The Integrity Division was a resounding success, already changing the culture at Vance Industries from the inside out. But the victory that mattered most was this one, here in the quiet of the park. Caleb let go of the kite string, handing it fully to Maya, and draped his arm around Serafina's shoulders. She leaned into him, a gesture that felt both new and perfectly natural. They weren't a CEO and an engineer anymore. They were two people who had found in each other the missing pieces of their lives. Together, they had repaired more than just a broken machine. They had repaired a broken company, and in doing so, had built the foundations of a new family. Have you ever looked at someone and seen only their job title, their uniform, their station in life? We so often judge the book by its cover, forgetting that the most brilliant minds and the kindest hearts can be hidden in the most unexpected places. Caleb's story reminds us that true worth isn't found in a title or a bank account, but in integrity, skill, and the quiet dignity of a job well done. It shows that one person, armed with the truth, can dismantle an empire of deceit. If this story of hidden genius and earned redemption moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that everyone has a story worth knowing.